Hello friends, thanks for joining me today. This is going to be my wrap up for all the books that I read in December, last month of 2025. I really wanted to focus on reading books that took place like in the winter time or in cold climates. So those are the books that I kind of tried to read this month, and I think I did a pretty good job. I actually read a lot of kind of holiday season books. So let's go ahead and get into those. And forgive me if some of the shinier books that I have a bit of a glare. I'm filming this kind of later in the afternoon, and in the winter the sun sets really early, so I'm using a light, and I generally try not to use it because it just adds a lot of glare. So sorry if I hold up a book like this that has a really shiny cover. I can't see what it looks like, so I'm sorry if you can't see the cover of it at all. I'll try and kind of shift it a little bit. So the first thing that I finished this month wasn't necessarily taking place in cold climates or weather, but it is cozy, and that is Brigands and Breadknives by Travis Baldree. This is the sequel to the cozy fantasy Legends and Lattes, and it follows a character named Fern, who is a ratkin bookseller that you actually meet in the prequel to that book, which is Bookshops and Bone Dust. Both are fantastic books, and Fern, while she's doing well in life with a fresh start in a new town, she has supportive friends, a successful bookshop, she feels this growing sense of restlessness and unhappiness anyway, and after a night of drinking away her feelings, she passes out in the cart of a very famous elven warrior who is on the way to collect a bounty on this strange goblin girl that she's transporting. So Fern gets swept along on this errand while trying to sort out her feelings of what she should be doing with her life. And this was 4 stars. I love this world so much, and the characters are just so charming and fun and likable. And this one definitely has much less of a chill, cozy vibe compared to Legends and Lattes. There's actually kind of a lot of action in this one, but the internal struggles that Fern goes through are so freaking real, and this did kind of get me emotional a couple times. It's a little messy because life and people and emotions are messy. It's a book about friendship and finding happiness, and at the end of it all is hope and understanding, and a message from the author to be well and to be kind to yourself. But this was also funny and entertaining and very cute, just like the other 2 books are. The characters are just very vivid. There are talking sentient weapons. There are some cool battle scenes. It did kind of take me a little while to sink into this one though. The vibe is a little heavier, and the pacing felt, a little slow. I know that they're all kind of slow, but I don't know, something about this one, the pacing just felt a little slow. But the other books, are kind of that same way. That's kind of part of the appeal of cozy fantasy. But in this one, yeah, I just felt as a bit of a drag until I really got going. Still really enjoyed it, and the message, I love the world, the ending was hopeful, and it was still a great read. Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This is a contemporary supernatural horror thriller centered on this woman named Vic McQueen. And as a young girl, she discovers she has the ability to use her bike to conjure up this bridge that delivers her to anything that she's trying to find, like a lost bracelet, for example. And there is also an old man named Charlie Manx who for decades has been kidnapping children and whisking them away in his vintage Rolls Royce with vanity plate Nosferatu to this magical place that only he can travel to called Christmas Land, and sort of feeding off of them. And one day Vic and Charlie cross paths, and she is the only kid to ever escape him. And in the present day, Charlie is hell-bent on getting revenge against her. And this was a surprising 5-star for me. This is fairly character driven, and the characters were just so compelling and often just really tragic. The prose really just conjures an atmosphere while being still very readable, and the supernatural magical thread that's just going through everything was just a great compliment to the character work, and like it just really helped hold my interest. There's a lot of violence in this. There are some really disturbing passages and lines, particularly from the point of view of a character named Bing, who is a sexual predator and disgusting. So like, I don't know, like, you know, beware going into this that it's a dark story with violence and death, including several animal deaths. There are just some uncomfortable lines based on the point of view, but I was really hooked reading this, and it's a sizable book. It's like about 700 pages, but I found myself just kind of flying through it. The ending was very high octane, and I would definitely read more by Joe Hill, who happens to be Stephen King's son, if you weren't aware. And fun fact that I learned, this book has a slightly different title in the UK. So in the US, it's Nosferatu with an A, but in the UK, it's Nosferatu with an R, presumably because they pronounce their R's kind of like A's. So, you know, to make that work, they changed the title, which I just found interesting and kind of funny. The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. This is a short story about a girl who goes into the woods with her animal friends and has a fateful encounter that changes her life. And this is practically like a children's book. It's not, but it has beautiful illustrations that you know, like take up a lot of space, sometimes entire pages, simple prose. A chunk of this book is an afterword by the author. I almost didn't bother rating this because there just isn't much here. So I don't know, I gave it a 3. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it just is a story that exists, like just, you know, this little bite-sized little fireside folktale. And, you know, I may just be dense, but like this was just whatever. I know it's a short story, but like I really wasn't expecting, you know, two to 3 words on a page, you know, 3 words on a 2-page spread kind of short. I wouldn't necessarily say this is worth reading, to be honest. Like, but I don't know, you can finish this in 15 minutes, less than that. So like it barely counts as a waste of time either. So I don't know, if you're interested, if you like Susanna Clarke, find a way to read it, you know, for free or super cheap. You know, don't pay the $16.99 to read it, I'd say. I got this for half off, half price on pre-order, because I've read Susanna Clarke's other books, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and Piranesi, both of which I enjoyed to differing levels, but I didn't need to read this, turns out. I didn't actually realize it was a short story when I ordered it. So my bad, I guess. Dark Water Daughter by H.M. Long, narrated by Moira Quirk and Samuel Rukin. This is the first book in a pirate fantasy series called The Winter Sea, which is what prompted me to read this in December. And it centers around 2 main characters and POVs. We have Mary, who is a storm singer with the ability to influence the weather, which is obviously invaluable for ships of all sorts. And we have Samuel, who is a naval officer serving on a privateer crew, and he is a seer with the ability to see glimpses of the future and look into this realm called the Other. And both of them wind up on sort of parallel journeys to capture this dangerous pirate named Lear. This was 4 stars, a great start, solid start to a series. It's adult, you know, maybe a little new adult in tone. It was very readable. There is the setting up for a romance in the next books, but this first book was really not a romance, very little romance here. But I liked both Mary and Sam. And there are also some great supporting characters. The magic is very interesting. I hope that we get to see more of the Other in the next books. There are several different kinds of magic abilities, like the Storm Singers and Seers are just a couple. And there are these creatures called gistings that are really cool. They're like spirits that reside in these special trees that are often cut down and shaped into like the figureheads of ships, where the gisting continues to reside and sort of protects the ship. They play a big role in the story. I do feel like the Storm Singer magic, though, was a bit lackluster in execution. Probably just personal taste, but I think it would have felt more magical if the songs that they sing were like in a unique language or used special, tones or phrases. But like storm singers can apparently just sing literally anything, and I don't know, it didn't come across well in my opinion how difficult it was supposed to be for Mary to like master her power. So just a little gripe that I had. There's a lot of tense relationships. Storm singers are often treated as slaves, which is where Mary finds herself very early on. Samuel is disgraced, but for an extremely unfair reason, and he has a very strained relationship with his shithead brother. There's plenty of action and intrigue. The ending sets up for continuing adventures, and but doesn't leave you on a cliffhanger, so that's nice. A very enjoyable start to a fantasy set on the high seas, and I will be continuing on with the next book. Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito, narrated by Anna Burnett. This is a historical horror thriller that takes place over the course of a few months leading up to Christmas Day in the 1800s in England. And it's about a woman named Winifred who signs on as a governess to the Pounds family, who are well off and have 2 children. And you watch her behave in sinister and unhinged ways, and I'll leave it at that. This is a relatively short book. The audiobook was only like 5 hours long. The narrator was good, and this was a 5-star, but I would feel like a bit of a weirdo recommending it or saying I enjoyed it. So like, I'm not gonna like insist you read it, but it was 5 stars. Winifred is insane, psychotic. As the title of the book suggests, she gets up to some strange, disgusting, horrific things, and she has an inner monologue that is also just strange, detached, just disgusting, horrific. So I don't know, like if you're someone who frequently needs content warnings for things, maybe just don't read this. And I know that everything is relative. Some people, maybe people who are more experienced in reading, bloody slasher horror thrillers, might not find this as shocking as I did, but it was shocking. Yeah, had my mouth dropped open at one point. But the writing was actually very poetic in a macabre kind of way, and there was humor as well. Like, my interest is piqued in this author. They've only written one other book, which I have added to my TBR, and yeah, read if you want an unhinged female main character. The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman. This takes place in the late 70s in New York, and you're following a vampire named Joey, who is stuck physically at 14 years old, but he's actually like 60, and you follow him as he tells about his life living underground with a pack of other vampires led by a badass bitch named Margaret. And one day he comes across these undead children, like really young children, who are unsettling and strange. This was a 2.5 star. I personally found this to be more boring than anything. It wasn't bad. The author just did a really bad job of making me care about any of the characters in what was actually a pretty character-driven book for a lot of it. Everyone except Margaret, who is actually interesting. Everyone except her is like just really bland, just giving nothing to me. Joey has a distinctive kind of snarky narration style, but other than that, he's just like another body moving around in the story. And there is a plot, but it takes a long time to come to fruition, and since I didn't care about anyone, I just wasn't really invested. Like, some of the action scenes were cool, and there are some creepy scenes, and I think like the part where you learn about the circumstances leading up to how Joey became a vampire was creepy and well done. It's a story about the haves and the have-nots in society, about survival. I just felt like neither the character development nor the plot were very engaging. I will give the author another try though, because he's the author of Between Two Fires, which is his most popular book. It's like kind of a historical horror fantasy, I think. I added it to my TBR this last spring. It sounds like a really cool story, like with angels and demons and stuff, like, so my vibe. But this one just didn't work for me. And the last thing that I read in 2025 was A Land So Wide by Erin A. Craig. This is a historical fantasy that takes place in the 1700s following this town of settlers in Canada who came by ship from, I think, Scotland. The town is sort of cursed. Well, not sort of, it's cursed, and anyone who stays in its borders past nightfall is magically stuck there. They can leave during the day, but must always return when night falls. Like, they physically cannot stop themselves from being pulled, swept back into the boundaries of the town. But they're also protected from these deadly creatures called Brigands that kill other people in other settlements, like on the continent. And the main character, Greer, has to find a way to get past the border to rescue her lover, who she sees somehow making it past the border and walking into the forest after the sun goes down. And this, unfortunately, was also a 2.5 star. There are some cool fantasy elements in this, but on the whole, it was a bit of an underwhelming story for me, and the world building felt a little flimsy, elements of that. The pacing was slow until it takes about halfway through the book for what happens, for what the dust jacket talks about actually happens. And the lead up to it was just mid. And there's a very strange love triangle that pops out of nowhere that was weird and unnecessary. Something about the ending also felt a little rushed to me. And I've read now 3 of Craig's other books. So this is the 4th book I've read by her. I've rated the first 3 that I've read by her all very highly, so it's a bummer that I didn't really love this one. It has some similarities to her book Small Favors, which I loved and would recommend. But I don't know, I'm not sure that this did any particular thing very well. Definitely my least favorite of her books by a mile. And I also think that this reads very YA, even though this is her adult debut. And those are all of the books that I read in December. I really read, it was fun. I read a lot of books that took place in December around Christmas or in just kind of cold wintry climates. So I think I definitely succeeded in that goal. And I have a couple books now that I'm aware of that take place in the cold winter time that I'll probably save for next December. But yeah, got through some fun books, some interesting books. And I hope that you enjoyed watching. I'm actually going to be going right into filming my Beat the Backlist 2025 kind of overview of how I did for that challenge. So that will be coming out soon. And I hope that you guys had a good reading year. And I have set my goal for next year, well, this year now, 2026. I didn't quite meet my reading goal last year because of all of the wedding planning going on. So hoping that this year, I still read a ton of books, but hoping that I can, meet the goal that I set this year. I had to lower my goal a little bit a couple times at the end in December because I really wanted to hit it. You can change your goal whenever you want. No one cares. So I hope that I can meet the goal that I set for 2026. But those were the things that I read at the end of the year. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!